Oh my goodness. Here we go again. Hello, dear family, friends, potential ex-lovers. I'm going down to Nimbin tomorrow. And I have absolutely no idea how this is going to go. I posted on a couple of the sort of community groups on Facebook just to gauge interest and see if anybody wanted to take part in an interview for it. And the response I've had so far has ranged from mildly interested to outraged. Some of the comments have been interesting. Fuck, mate, you need more than 5 fucking days. 4 days in depth. In February this year. It's going nowhere. Great forward planning, seriously. What excellent planning. Can't imagine it will be in depth. Cheers to that, I suppose. I'm gonna go get my ute ready and we'll head off tomorrow.
100 years ago, it took a week for the pioneers to travel from Lismore to Nimbin, a do-it-yourself town for generations. And now it's do-it-yourself with a vengeance. The Aquarius takeover must be the most unlikely experience in the village's history. The signs point away from local values and traditions. The festival's an exercise in rejecting the uptight social order. Some of the locals think it's an exercise in arrested development.
I would never give the power to a bald head. Run, come, crucify the dread.
And so off we went. We were met with a balmy day on our way down to Nimbin, the so-called counterculture capital of Australia nestled quietly among the trees in northern New South Wales. As soon as you enter the place, it's like you're transported into a smoky dream world where the only law is to break the rules. Peace signs, cannabis leaves and a kaleidoscope of rainbows are lovingly painted on just about every building in town. On first glance, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was the same town as 50 years ago. Apart from setting up camp, we had nothing else planned that day, so almost immediately we headed into the main street to try to make some new friends. Nobody's really seemed keen to give us an interview. We have met a couple of people so far, but being a Thursday afternoon, not a lot seems to be happening here, which is pretty common for rural Australia. So we're going to go into the pub and see if we can find anybody that wants to talk to us. And yeah, we didn't film anything in the pub, but it was good because it was a very interesting experience. I don't think that Nimbin is one of those places that you can come to where you just film shit.
Yeah,
willy-nilly, because people don't like that. Obviously, it's fair enough. People don't like having fucking cameras shoved in their faces.
pointing at them, yeah.
Yeah.
People were pretty amazing, like open-minded and wanting to talk about their stories.
The tourist traffic, magnetized by tales of bare-breasted girls and orgies down by the riverside, should get their money back. The festival is as much about toilets as anything. At least that's true for Graham Dunstan, the chief guru of Aquarius.
Well, right from the beginning, we've set out to create an anti-consumer festival with the idea that the festival is what people make it. And right now, my contribution's drains. So the festival's about drains.
Follow the sun, which way the wind blows.
We had been invited to go to a weekly art class by one of our new friends, Annie, who we had met at the pub the afternoon before. But after seeing how much better the children were at painting than I am, a pang of jealousy shot through me. After chatting for a bit, we went to meet with Teddy, a member of the original Aquarius Festival in 1973 who had graciously agreed to let us pick his brain.
Hi, how are you? Do you like vinyl records? We have a big display. Come back later. You're welcome. Rolling Stones. So, welcome to Nimbin, you guys. Your new film crew.
Yeah, another one. Apparently you guys seem to get a lot.
Yeah, we
From what
do.
we've heard.
We do. The festival over 10 days had 10,000 people coming here from universities all around Australia and people from all around the world. Out of those, there were 400 people who were sitting around saying, after Nimbin, what? What are we going to do? We like being here. We like each other. I want to settle down here. My objective was, I was on a mission to make sure that that happened. The town was run down. Basically, the community around here had collapsed over about 20 years with the demise and what we call the cooperatisation of the dairy industry. And they were going to do Murwillumbah. Now, Murwillumbah was already a sizable town, but this place down here was high and dry. It would get cut off, so it was a much better place to come and build a community. And plus, you got a free town. We've survived. How did we survive? Because we looked after each other and we looked after ourselves. Somebody wasn't looking after themselves, we'd say, hey mate, you need to look after yourself a bit better. COVID hit and the New World Order vision came down. People were locked in to being locked down. They thought that was the right thing to do. Look, truth is missing in this age, but it's there. At least it's there. Cleanliness is totally absent in this age, so get a bit of cleanliness, you know?
You think there was more love back in the 70s? Like,
it was. We just come out of the 60s.
yeah.
And you've heard of free love?
Yeah.
Well, the 60s was the decade of free love.
To me, it seems like there's not a whole lot of love left in the world.
No.
That may be a cynical view.
Yeah. Well, look, I can tell you that most of the demons have already been killed. And that happened 5,000 years ago with Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where 100 million warriors who were working for the Kurus, who were like the demons, like there's the saints and the demons, like half the world is made up of saints and half the world is made up of demon territory, you know. Yeah. So they're all under the control of God. I heard this, my friend over here, he was saying how it is all right for what's happening in Ukraine. Because what will happen is it will develop into a new place, including Syria and Turkey, which have just had their earthquake. Let's see. And it'll be a new generation in the now. It'll be rebuilt in the now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Teddy. Really appreciate your time, mate.
You're a gem.
Wonderful. You're a gem. All right. We'll leave you to it. We'll come back a bit later on. And
Enjoy yourself. Yeah.
Thanks.
Though I certainly didn't agree with everything he said, I still thought Teddy was a very cool guy. However, I began to feel as though something was off. Many people had seen my post on Facebook by this point, and the general warmth we had been met with yesterday seemed to have cooled off. Still, the afternoon before, we had been invited to a jam session by one of the locals, so I decided to go back to camp and practice a bit. I wasn't quite sure what to make of everybody's sudden change in tone, but I was sure that a jam session in Nimbin would be an absolute riot. When I think of a jam session, I think of beer. I've always felt as though beer is an integral part of a jam session. This jam session was in a cafe that didn't serve alcohol and was not at all what I was expecting. It also had no beer. These people were actually enjoying themselves without alcohol. I couldn't make heads or tails of it, but it was very cool indeed.
That didn't take long, did it? Yeah, we got yelled at though. That was pretty mean.
Yeah, that was pretty weird. I mean, it wasn't the first time we got yelled at today.
True. Then we just got yelled at.
That's what happened. Yeah.
For filming from afar.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't shoving a camera in anybody's faces. We were outside a restaurant.
Tribal living is what the festival is all about. The commandments of the counterculture forswear the consumer society. The injunction is to use the resources of nature, and from it will flow love and an end to competition.
Another beautiful day in paradise. Here's what it would have been on Fraser Island. Unfortunately, we were ruining it for the locals here. As we walked past the hole that had been left after a violent fire ripped through the town back in 2014, people would talk to each other in hushed tones. It was said by the police that the fire was deliberately lit, and it almost felt as though we were suspects in the community's eyes. Everyone knew we were here now, and nobody wanted a bar of us. So it's Saturday in Nimbin. The tourists are out. After last night's little escapade of getting sort of yelled at in the streets, I think people are a lot more weary of us now. Nobody seems to be too interested in talking to us. So I don't really know. How we're gonna proceed. I think we do have a couple of interviews lined up. We sat there for a while trying to contact the people who said they would be keen for an interview, but all of a sudden nobody was responding anymore. After much deliberation on a desperate situation, a drastic decision had to be made. It was time to do something that I hadn't done in quite a while. I don't know whether this is going to get anybody interested in talking to us. We will probably just get too high and then not be able to talk to anybody. But when in Rome... I thought that our little frolic in the woods was a thoroughly enjoyable way to spend the afternoon. It was a welcome reprieve from the steely gazes of the local townspeople, but even after all that unadulterated tomfoolery, I still hadn't figured out where I could take this documentary. Running out of time and with no more interviews in the pipeline, I began to worry that our trip would be a failure. Everywhere we went, we were bothering people. We couldn't not be pests in Nimbin. Even the dog was judging us. This was supposed to be a fucking documentary.
Before Aquarius, Nimbin was on its uppers. Lots of dead shops and dispirited residents. Today it's never had it so good, and the future looks rosy. The smell of the alternative cigarette sweetens the main street air, and the word is out that the police are not bent on busting the town.
It was our last full day in Nimbin. As I went about my morning preparing my coffee, I couldn't help but think back to the first time I came here. At 17, I was just a pup, and back then Nimbin was known as a wondrous land of freedom and counterculture. My mates and I told my mum we were going to the beach, took her car, and drove through the rainforests and dairy farms of the northern rivers. We were excited. For a bunch of spotty, naive kids, it was almost as if we were going to Amsterdam itself. What we were greeted with was exactly what we were hoping for. Backpackers and hippies filled the streets. There was a laneway where people sold bags of weed laid out on tables. Everyone had a smile on their face. Music filled the air. It was glorious. But it's all changed. This isn't the Nimbin that I remember. The most recent time I was here was 2 years ago, and on the evening we stayed, we saw a fight break out at a drum circle. The 2014 fire and the subsequent police raids, which become more and more common every year, have irreversibly changed this town. When the heart of a town is destroyed, can it ever really stand a chance of returning to its former glory? By midday, we still had nothing. On another trip into town, we had once again been met with disdain. Within an hour, 3 people had told us not to film. We were dumbfounded. We could tell by people's reactions that they didn't trust us, but we couldn't place why. I felt as though we'd been courteous and honest enough to gain the community's acceptance, so why weren't they accepting us? People had told us how uncomfortable they were with the CCTV cameras the government had set up here, and that clearly extended to people trying to make videos as well. Even the local magpies began giving us the stink eye. It seemed as though my drunken idea to show the bright side of Nimbin had failed. Alright, so our week in Nimbin. Our week felt like a week. Fuck, it felt like a century.
Yeah, at least a century. Yeah.
Yeah, we got told to fuck off a couple of times.
What I realised about Nimbin is that you shouldn't go around pointing cameras in people's faces expecting them to be happy about it.
Actually, you can't. Some places you can do it and it's pretty accepted. Other places, like this one, it's not.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
That's the question. Abby, shut up.
Is that the question? What is it?
You've been quiet literally until this moment. Shush. Shush.
But why?
Shush. What do you think of Nimbin Avalon?
Wow.
Wow. All right. Come here. Come here. Yeah, I know. I can't believe the backlash. We got fucking how many times? We were only out for fucking like, what, an hour today? We got asked like 3 times not to film.
Not to film, or
yeah.
not to publish videos with people in them. Yeah.
But I wonder if a lot of that's rooted in conspiracy theories as well.
Some were like, "Are you recording us?" Like we are spies or aliens or something like that.
Heavy, dude. I'm holding you for a reason. It's because you keep making noise and we're trying to do something right now. I love you, but stop. I love it. Stop it. Stop it. It's all good. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Would you recommend Nimbin to anybody after being here?
Nobody with a camera, definitely, but yeah, no more than one day, I think. Leave those people alone because that's what they want, actually.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Nimbin was an interesting experience.
It was full of contradictions. Yep.
Well, you want to smoke a joint?
To take our minds off things, we decided to hit the turf. After such a beatdown on my abilities as someone that would like to be a filmmaker, I wanted to feel as though I could win something. Anything. However, as it quite depressingly turned out, I was actually worse at lawn bowls than I am at filmmaking. As a callous magpie endeavoured to rub salt in our wounds, yet another one of the locals made their contempt for our presence very well known. Lawn bowls was a distraction of sorts, but it didn't make me feel like any less of a loser. Antoine had proved to be better than me by a country mile despite the fact he's never played a game in his life, and losing several games of one of Australia's most cherished sports to a foreigner left me feeling more despondent than a root rat in a convent. However, despite the metaphorically unpleasant taste left in my mouth, the act of doing anything other than trying to make a fucking documentary was almost lustral.
Do you think that the townspeople have got any idea about what counterculture means, what opting out by non-consuming means?
When we started planning the festival, we started looking for a site. Our initial idea was that we should go somewhere where we didn't have this sort of interaction. And then we came across the possibility of Nimbin, and our thinking changed, and we thought, well, look, why should we try and run away from this sort of interaction? Surely this is part of the growth of the community.
Doctor said I'm feeling kinda rough. Let me break it to you, son. Your shit's fucked up. I said my shit's fucked up. Well, I don't see how. He said the shit that used to work, it won't work now.
As sure as death and taxes, the sun rose again in Nimbin. Another day, another dollar. As we packed up camp, I still had no idea what to make of our time here. I had about 1 million questions, but for the life of me I could not find any answers. It looked like Nimbin was a shell I just couldn't crack. Before we left though, we still had one more person to talk to.
We've had a pretty tepid response from the locals in Nimbin. Why do you think that is?
We all want to protect the place. I don't think anyone really loves change. I know I don't. In some ways I do wish the community would be more open to that, but I can understand why they're not, or why we're not. I came here today to see what you're about and to give my honest truth. I can understand their hostility and their want to block it all out.
Preserve what they created.
Yeah. Yeah. Who wants to lose what they love so much? I myself have issues with people taking photos and filming our children. We don't know where that's going to end up. And a lot of adults, myself included, I went through a time where I was hiding here. I didn't know what I was hiding from, but I just needed a place. People have seen me and my son and all of us through their cameras, but they're not seeing us. They'll take those photos home and they'll go, oh yeah, look at these hippies, this little hippie kid. And they'll have their judgments and their assumptions without ever actually finding out what they're even taking a photo of. The problem is, and I was told not to do this by a few people, because the content's always taken and it's flipped. It just makes us look like shit. When people say, oh, where are you from? And we say Nimbin, it would be nice for their face not to fall.
Yeah. How do you think that the community wants to be portrayed in the media?
I mean, positively, obviously.
Or do you think they want to be portrayed at all in the media?
Some no, some yes. I'm always keen for a platform to share about medicinal cannabis. And when I was in Warrnambool, I was using cannabis and I was trying to share this information and I was just being squashed. You're a stoner, no hope and tree hugging hippie, which I am, but that's not related to being a stoner or smoking cannabis. So, and that's another reason I'm here, and I love it here because I fit, whereas out in normal society, the way I think and the way I am just doesn't fit. I deleted Facebook. Actually, I lie. I still have Facebook because I like Marketplace. But I'm getting there, I'm going to delete it. We've all got to do it.
What are you going to do without Marketplace?
I don't know.
You have to use Gumtree. Fuck.
Yeah, Gumtree's good.
At least Gumtree doesn't track you.
They can pay us for that, Gumtree.
Yeah, Gumtree. Come on, baby.
We only have what they choose to give us. And we think that, oh, we've created all this and we've got that. No, they've given it to us. All right, I'm going deep here.
No.
Because if we didn't have those things, what would the world be like? Although, wouldn't make any money. All right, now I'm starting to sound a little bit. For a long time, I thought that there was no one else like me and that I was out there all on my own, trying to save the world on my own. And I came here. And there are so many people doing wonderful things. And there are people doing bad things everywhere, all over the world. And it's our energy that's trying to solve those problems.
Yeah.
And we can't do it on our own.
No.
So come on, everyone.
Yeah.
I was struck by how open and honest Forrest had been with us. After speaking with her, I realised that the issue wasn't with the locals, it was with me. Despite the image that Nimbin has garnered for itself, the people here are still just people. They've got their own hopes, dreams and aspirations beyond the smoky little hilltop dream world that they live in, and clearly they're sick of outsiders beating the same dead horse over and over again.
Oh, cool, a water dragon. So our mission to make a documentary about Nimbin has failed miserably. It has crashed and burned. I believed that we would just be able to come here and people would be like ecstatic to talk about the town on camera, but they're not. A wise man once said, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. That man was Steve-O. It doesn't feel great knowing that Steve-O is smarter than I am.
This town is changing, that's for sure. I wanted to try to get an idea of where this place is heading, but honestly I don't think you can. It will either fall apart at the seams or it will prosper. But no matter how the story pans out, I don't believe it's a story that I'm qualified to tell. All I can give you is what I've observed, so here it is. When people think of Nimbin, I imagine many would categorise the people here as dickheads. But what about the dickheads who come here just to buy weed? The dickheads who come here just to ogle the locals? Or what about this dickhead, who thought he could just rock up and intrude on strangers' lives and they wouldn't get upset about it? Turns out that maybe, just like everyone else, I'm more than a bit of a dickhead. But surely everyone is. It's just that the dickheads who don't know they're dickheads might be the biggest dickheads of them all. So what's my advice after all this? Well, if you want to make a documentary on counterculture, don't be like me. Don't be a dickhead. Don't go to Nimbin.